Hello, my name is Paula Montagna. I am very passionate about working with patients with cancer. I began my career about 33 years ago as a student at New York Cornell Hospital, and I worked very closely with the American Cancer Society to try and get things started in terms of nutrition. I worked at Sloan Kettering, working with head and neck cancer patients and patients that required feeding tubes and modified diets due to swallowing. And flash forward about 25 years, I find myself very excited to be part of a new cancer center called the Phillips Family Cancer Center as part of our Stony Brook Southampton Hospital East End nutrition focus. I do some Eat Real to Heal nutrition classes and food as medicine classes. So I've been studying food as medicine and culinary nutrition for about 15 years. So I like to try and get that health message out there to try and what you can do to heal yourself and what you can do to have a better approach to nutrition. So I'm very excited about that. I see Amanda just popped in. So Amanda is my superstar in the Cancer Center. And she is very well liked and very well received because she's very passionate about cancer and nutrition as well. And we work very closely to try and bring the information to the patients. So Amanda, do you want to add anything regarding what you're doing?
Yeah, so it's always been a passion of mine to work with cancer patients. It's something that, I enjoyed right from when I first became a dietitian. I had numerous opportunities to work with cancer patients in the city.
Hi, did you get my email?
Hospitals. I'm just gonna, okay. And it's been great. And my love for that has definitely led me to pursue a career where I can actually now work with patients like one-to-one and really do counseling. And I do monthly Zoom lectures on different types of topics related to nutrition and cancer for the community. So, we try to start those conversations and do all those things. So yeah, it's been great. I look forward to having all these discussions with you guys today.
Okay. So the first question we really wanted to kind of hear from you all is kind of what is the biggest roadblock for adequate nutritional intake? Does anyone have any comments about what really stands in the way from getting adequate nutrition?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. Okay, that's a good one. Is it knowledge in terms of what to eat, or is it knowledge in terms of what's going on in your body based on the cancer or the cancer therapy?
I think it's just overall knowledge of what to eat, what is going to benefit you and what is going to harm you. And of course it relates directly to what's going on in your body, but how do you get that information? And how do you even know to ask for that information?
Okay, that's very important. I feel like sometimes, we have dietitians that are available in the cancer centers, but we kind of try and reach out and do these programs and educate people. But sometimes it is individually. I mean, we have all these theories on what's the best food to eat, what's the best diet to be on, but it's also very individualized to what is really, really happening within the patient, what their personality, what their preferences, what their body's responding to. So I think the more you can connect with someone that's a nutrition expert is very beneficial. Kirsten, did you have anything else to add in terms of that?
Yeah, I would say I am from Smith Center for Healing and the Arts in Washington, D.C. And I would say that two things come to mind, cost and time.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And I think that's the whole thing. I think stemming from understanding it, but also stemming from the time. Do you mean the time in terms of making and preparing foods, or you mean the time in not having time to eat? I'm not really sure I understand.
I was talking prep time, and that would encompass energy too, right? So we're dealing with cancer patients, so time sort of gets diminished with lack of energy, I think, as well.
Yes, that's definitely a big barrier. And now, what do you think in terms of cost? Is it you're looking for specialty items, or you're looking for just whole foods? Like, how does cost really play into that?
I would say the cost of whole foods is sometimes off limits for a lot of people, and in the city, we have Ward 7 and 8. And if we go into their neighborhoods and say, you know, we show up with an organic recipe of all these unique foods that they're not used to, even in their own cultures and their own lives, it doesn't work. So we've worked really hard to do other work around that, but I'm really interested to hear what people have to say.
Okay.
And I was going to add, my name is Nancy. I'm with Epic Experience. We do programs for adult survivors. So I am constantly hearing this subject matter of when somebody went through chemo and eating, and we are very careful to never impart, like, you know, when we hear somebody say, don't eat sugar, don't eat this, because I think it is so individual. And I'm seeing more and more hospitals have a nutritionist that's part of the cancer team, which I think is a big thing. But I think also that peer connection of hearing from other survivors that maybe have walked a similar route, that are like, I can't process whole foods. I can't process. We've had people that are like, you know, listen to somebody that's vegan. Well, that was a total disaster, you know, for somebody else. So I think the sensitivity to not impart, like, this is what you should do, but making sure that people, nutritionists, doctors, are listening to the patient, because there are days when macaroni and cheese is going to be what is going to work, so they can at least eat something, right? Depending on the cancer and the treatment. So there's not a one size fits all.
No.
Yeah, at all. And I know you know that,
Yeah,
but
no, I agree. I also think it's very individualized in terms of, you know, tastes and access and everything, but I also believe it's also very important to support and say, these are the healthy things that you should try and incorporate.
Absolutely.
And incorporating these things in simple manners, or with, you know, we do a lot with recipes and we do a lot with support groups and things, bringing the things in that are good, not bad mouthing the bad, but trying to say, bringing the good. And, you know, people naturally, hopefully, will gravitate away from some of the things that cause the complications in their body. But I definitely agree with you, because I don't like to say you have to eat organic apples. I like to say you have to eat fruits and vegetables. And if you can get access to organic, the better. But it's not something we kind of focus in as much on.
But for so many too, the resources of finding that information, I think vary, like, nationally in the United States. I mean, we constantly, I mean, it was a godsend, Livestrong, when my son was diagnosed with testicular cancer 13 years ago. So it's still the place where I'll say, if you don't have a cancer center that even has a nutritionist or a social worker, it's like, go to the Livestrong site, you know, start there. So the education piece is a big part of it, but it is so individual, so individual.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Something else to add on that note, if I could.
I wanted to add to that about getting, first is to get the knowledge and the suggestions about what to eat and what not to eat. What I found helpful was to actually get recipes and meal, like menus, like what to eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, maybe for a whole week or a month. Because sometimes you don't know what to do with the information.
No, that's great. And now, Aileen, I think.
Yes, thank you. You had said the word simple, and I think, you know, there's so much overwhelm and so many decisions going on. I'm a breast cancer survivor and now a holistic nutritionist, and it's the simplicity is, I think, you use the word simple, and I wanted to say, yes, simple is so important. So anyway, just to chime in on that, cutting through the overwhelm and the confusion to keep things very simple in terms of recipes and kind of guidance is so key. Simplicity is key.
Great. Amanda, what do you think is another issue that we should kind of delve into today?
So, you know, kind of like going off of that a little bit, you know, everybody's situation is a little bit different. Everybody's, you know, what they were diagnosed with was different. The treatment's going to be different. Everybody's side effects that they're going to get from treatment are completely different, even if it's for the same cancer, the same treatment. So I'd like to hear like from you guys, if you know, undergoing treatment, what were some of the side effects like that affected your intake, some of the nutrition related side effects, and how were you able to manage? And if, how did that affect your intake? Were you able to manage? So feel free to just go ahead and start.
I know someone had mentioned fatigue as one of the roadblocks. Is there any other real roadblock that you can think of really gets in the way for healthy eating? Scott?
I wanted to jump in with some of those thoughts, thinking about the physical barriers to good nutrition. When I was post-surgery and was filling up with fluid and my actual ability to fill my stomach, there was not a lot of space there. When Judy was in chemotherapy and her digestive system was really beginning to fail. So lots of things like that to consider.
So more like physical barriers within your body that was really causing more of the complications. Yeah.
Correct.
Yes, we were talking, Amanda and I were talking about that in terms of gas, bloating,
Right.
Constipation, diarrhea, just food that the food's not going to fit because there's no real space in that. So maybe even just understanding that maybe you need to discuss these kind of things with the doctor and kind of say, okay, what can I do? Is there someone I can kind of reach out to and talk to about? That definitely is very helpful because it's not often the treatment that's causing the problem, or it is a treatment, but it's kind of like it's hard to see what the exact issue is. So it wasn't really fatigue for you, it was the GI distress or the fluid overload that was compounding the problem.
Right.
I'd like to add to the barrier part, particularly in communities of color. A lot of times there is just not physical access to healthy foods. I'm here in Houston, Texas, and the work that we do primarily at Texas Children's Hospital, 50% of the patients seen there live at or below the poverty level, which means in Houston, they probably live in a food desert. So our caretaker part in our education piece is what we try to do in our work is to link them with healthy foods, the recipes, of course, but then they've got to get to a grocery store. So I think just the dialogue about communities that are impoverished or at risk, not having access is also key. They don't have the food available to them.
No, that's a very good point because we all, when we talk about this is healthy or this is organic, it's not even that organic or not organic. It's that you're not getting, maybe the proteins you need or the fruits and vegetables you need. So it's kind of, I think, a bigger issue in a sense that it's kind of like we can't get access to the good foods or even just healthy eating. So I definitely think that should be a target for us because I feel like all things should be available to all people. And unfortunately, there is a divide and we have to kind of work how we climb over this divide and get the access for everyone. So I definitely think that that's a great point, Danetta. Thank you.
I think another big issue too is how to get that food. If somebody's in treatment and say they don't have a caregiver with them, how do they even have the time? They don't feel well, so they can't go to the store. So one of the hospitals here in Denver, and I think I saw it in California as well, they actually had like on certain days of the week, and it kind of grew, there were local farmers markets that came right to the hospital, and some of them donated the fresh fruits and vegetables right in the cancer center. So when a patient was leaving, it was like, here's a bag of fruits and vegetables. And that was pretty amazing because, we can talk all this, but if you don't feel well enough and can't go to the store, we're all going to go to the bad habits of whatever's close.
No, that's a great point because I feel like, yes, if you can't get access to it and, it doesn't even matter. But then once you have access, it's nice, like you said before, to have a simple recipe to put together a smoothie or a stir fry or something to that effect. So the next thing I'm kind of wondering is what about the whole concept of really like a taste changes? Does anyone experience any issues with taste changes and how, or other things that really affect the actual intake? Just say we were able to get the food into the person's refrigerator, into the person's access. What's the problem with any other issues kind of medically that happen? So Sarah, do you have some comments about that?
Yeah, when I was in chemo for breast cancer, I did have taste changes that definitely made things that I normally love taste bad. But also after my first treatment, I got a really bad mouth infection. And there was about a week and a half, 10 days or so, where I had a swollen gums that were like swollen over my back teeth. So I couldn't chew anything. I had to just be, have smoothies was pretty much all I lived on for that period of time. And, A, nothing tasted right, but B, I couldn't even chew solid food. And I didn't really have a lot of guidance from, or any help from doctors other than, trying to control the infection, but no real help as to, what do I eat during this time. It was miserable.
No, that's a very good point, because it's kind of like even your favorite foods you might not be able to chew or eat. So it's kind of like, oh, what do I do? And yes, chicken soup is great for the soul, and we all use chicken soup as one of the remedies, but sometimes anything that we suggest, I mean, you really need someone that can kind of define these type of things for you. This is kind of what's good to do. Does anyone have any other comments in terms of textures or tastes that we would need to look into when creating or coming up with a product or something? Any ideas on that?
Well, I'd like to talk on it. It doesn't matter what nutrition you're going to take in until you get the nutrition of the mind. We talk about education, but I think our most strong nutrition is thought. So if we have no belief, no faith, our shadow's telling us we're not worthy, all these things, you're going to be in a stressed state. So you won't have the assimilation. You won't be able to take it. You'll be in fight or flight. So I think for nutrition, we have to learn that there's a couple steps of the thought is the most vital nutrient, and then oxygen is your second, and then water, and then food comes along. But if your thoughts are making you unable to have assimilation, you're not getting proper circulation or elimination. These nutrition is going to be very tough if you're all backed up and you're toxic in your gut. So, so many levels to nutrition, but I think belief and hope are some barriers to even believing. So the negative placebo, to cross that barrier to move into health is very critical.
I agree, Daniel. I mean, I think definitely the power of positive thinking, like you're saying, is very critical to moving forward. And I think sometimes cancer centers or sometimes foundations have support people that work on mental health issues, work on trying to get people in the positive setting. I know the cancer center that we work with has a social worker, has, positive minded people there, but I think sometimes people don't reach out for that effect because they feel like they're going there for cancer treatment. They don't realize that there's ways to kind of help you and as a whole in a more holistic approach.
So definitely testimonial work and sharing of stories, and to get people that move from that fear state to, okay, wait, I do have control. I do have something that I could be doing, and cleaning up those thoughts and that mind is critical to, that shadow work, trauma that probably led to the cancer to begin with, the poor choices and not caring and self-love.
No, I definitely agree with that. Amanda, do you think there's another topic that we should be kind of really focusing in on today?
Yeah, I've actually been monitoring the chat a little bit, and there's a lot of good comments and information in here. One of the things that actually just popped up, Christopher, from Sarah, was a little bit about being bombarded with an excess of conflicting information about what to eat, and then having some feelings of guilt associated with that. And even afterwards, as a survivor, having feelings of guilt if you just feel like you want to have a drink or a dessert, and then that can affect mental health. Does anyone have any other people had experiences like that? And if so, were there things that helped you? What were those situations like?
I can speak to that a bit. I have gone to an integrative approach. So I'm on a vegan / pescatarian kind of a diet, and it's rather difficult sometimes to sit down. So I can't have any sugar, added refined sugars or anything, molasses or any of that kind of stuff. And so it really makes it challenging when at one time I was, had a pretty good sweet tooth for dessert. Just watching a lot of that stuff being consumed at certain times. And you're sitting there eating something that's maybe not as fun.
Okay. Now that's an interesting point, and that's a good point. Often sometimes, it's understandable that fear, it becomes almost like you're fearful to eat or try anything else. But, you have to also, part of like when we do, for survivorship and kind of moving forward with diet and nutrition, we do make sure that we're educating patients too, and kind of emphasizing on like, you don't have to be afraid, if you want to have a slice of cake, kind of like anybody else, like enjoy your slice of cake, and it would be kind of like the same thing that we'd say to other people, like, you don't want to have it every day, but if you want to have it, once a week or whatever it is, you don't need to live in fear. But that also takes some time to kind of get used to those thoughts again. And, that's kind of where to kind of redirecting some of that misinformation that like having any sugar at all is going to bring your cancer back. It's just, it's not true. It's just, you need to be able to, and something we work on is trying to get that mindset back of being able to have everything in moderation and just rebuilding, structure and moving forward, after treatment and things like that.
And I think so also with very restrictive diets, sometimes people need help and guidance to say, okay, what would be a great sweet vegan item that I could come up with, or something. The more you can really say, okay, this is the diet that I feel I need to do based on what I've discovered or learned or feel based on my diagnosis or my case, but then how can I work this into something more positive? I think that's what Amanda's saying. We always want to have that positive attitude. We don't want to feel deprived or stressed out or scared to do something, but we also want to do something that we feel comfortable doing. So it's really a way to kind of, pull all things together and get more focused. Does that really make sense, Laszlo?
It makes sense. The problem with it is now that, and I threw something out in the chat. It's just my wife and myself at home. Our kids are all grown, so we don't have anyone else in the household. And she's obviously not on the same nutrition plan that I'm on. And so now that just means that either I or her, and, obviously at the times when I'm, going through treatment or was going through treatment or just not feeling up, now that means she has to prep two different, either desserts. She's always prepping two different meals because we both eat differently. And it just makes it very challenging. And she's working full time, outside the house. I'm obviously kind of confined to working from home. And so it just, makes for a long day when she gets home, and now she's got to prep two different meals.
No, that is a concern. And I think that's why it's kind of like, if you can make the base of the meal, the vegetables or the healthy items, and then kind of have a little bit of difference.
We've had that conversation many times. Let me tell you, she's just a tad bit stubborn, but it's just, even with the dessert kind of stuff, that means you have to do something totally different for someone else. And, just like I may not feel that great. She's just tired at the end of the day or on the weekend, and she doesn't want to be cooking all weekend.
Yes, and cancer therapy and cancer caregiving are two very stressful situations, and they take up a lot of energy. So maybe even just having things, even just access to things that are prepared, or, maybe like a dessert item, or maybe like an easy soup or something. It's kind of like maybe that, like even just the whole recipe of quick, simple things, that might be a good way to kind of access and bring it together. I mean, we all have our roles that we try and play. And I even know when cooking for my family, I pick some things that are different, and I'm exhausted because I'm in the kitchen, but that doesn't mean I don't want to try to kind of meet everyone's needs, which is a challenge at times, definitely. Yeah. Aileen, do you have a comment about that?
Is it okay if I speak? I don't want to speak over anyone. Okay, great. So yes, and freezing too. If you make a meal and freeze it, I've been doing a lot of, I do a black bean soup in a crock pot and I freeze it. And there's so many things that you can freeze that are wonderful meals and wonderful recipes.
Yep,
and then
we've done a bunch of that. Yep.
Oh, good. Well, that's how I stick to my diet. Or my plan, I should say, is you know, I freeze a bunch ahead of time. But one of the things Amanda had asked was, what are some of the ways that people can maybe enjoy that slice of cake and not, you know, have all of the mental baggage that might come along with that? Because I struggled with that as well. All of a sudden, I can't eat anything fun anymore. This is, you know, but there's a few things. One, you know, you can, or one thing I tried was, okay, on Friday, I'm going to have something fun on Friday. And then if I want it on Tuesday, I say, nope, I'll wait till Friday. And then another idea is to, I would say to myself, well, sure, of course I want that, but I want my health more. And when I would say that, it would sort of, you know, sort of prioritize in my mind, oh yeah, I don't need that Diet Coke. I would rather have, you know, my health. So that was one thing I would say to myself is, yeah, acknowledge I want it, but I would move past that and say, I want something else more. And then just that kind of goes along with planning responses ahead of time. If you know you're going to be in a situation where there's a lot of tempting foods that might not be on your focus plate, knowing ahead of time, saying, oh, I'm going to do that Friday, or, you know, having something, a response ahead of time so you're not in the moment making those decisions, because that can be very fatiguing as well and lead to stress. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I think those are really great. And, you know, to your point too, you know, if you're going into a situation where, whether it's a party, I mean, whatever, you know, another good thing is to like maybe make something, you know, you're comfortable eating and bring it. So at least you have something there that you feel comfortable eating. You know, maybe there's other things, but at least you know you have that one thing that's there. And I did just take a look in the chat too. And Sarah made another comment about that she had worked with a nutritionist who emphasized that no food is good or bad. I definitely am a big believer in that. And it's hard not to label foods. But, you know, again, that's part of sometimes like opening up your mindset. It's part of the healing, you know, and moving forward is, you know, how do you view food? You know, what, you know, why are we saying that this particular food is bad? Why is this particular food good? So, you know, again, just some adjustments to and thought process changes that, you know, take time to make.
Now, does anyone have any issues with things that just don't taste right, or the lack of eating because of, you know, something more about the food, specific foods that are problematic? Does anyone have any kind of experience with that?
This is Greg. I know throughout my cancer battle and others that I come into contact, obviously working on behalf of the foundation, particularly chemotherapy and radiation therapy caused my sensitivity levels to just skyrocket. And so where I might have liked spicy food before, it was impossible to have. And quite frankly, I didn't know it until you try it. And then you've got the repercussions of, okay, I've done that. And, you know, it was hot or whatever the symptom was, and I can't do it anymore. So I think you have to realize that it's almost like anything else you do in life. You're going to have some moderation with those changes, because you just don't know what to expect until you see it. And you experience it. I know was the case with mine, and I've talked with survivors all the time and patients, and the same kind of thing. Your taste buds change, your desire for things change, and it's almost a trial and error process to find, okay, what are my new favorite foods now, and what can my body take, and what can I process and handle? So that's been my experience.
Greg, I've heard that all the time with the people we work with. And again, that's why I think it's so individual. But I think the importance of sharing that information to get out there to newly diagnosed people, to say, you know, others have, you know, there's the nutritional piece of it, of course, the fruits and vegetables and all that. But then there's the reality of chemo taking away spices and this and that. We have somebody with lung cancer. She did a trial and she loved like a bite of chocolate every night. She's totally in shape. She was a runner. It almost made her vomit because of the trial she was on. So again, that's where that individual, but I think that education component to say, this doesn't happen to everybody, but it has happened to some, you know, that can impact. Because I don't think the nutritionists, maybe they're saying it, but not everybody sees them. So I think that education would be amazing. Again, it's that peer-to-peer experience that means so much, that people that have lived it. like so many of you.
What
I
about
would love to add to that, that the mind-body connection is being reestablished. And so we could learn that our taste buds and our thought about taste is a learned behavior. And we can reestablish that and make little shifts towards better, or towards things that make us feel like, hey, I'm making better choices for nutritional density versus feeding for pleasure.
I want to follow up on something I saw in the chat that was from Scott Joy. As a caregiver, you know, you're trying really hard to provide food for the other person, and they've got this desire to have, oh, I'm really hungry for this. And so as the caregiver and the one who wants to do the right thing, man, you work really hard to give them whatever they want at that time. Well, all of a sudden it doesn't taste quite like they thought. Well, you feel like, well, God, I'm the failure. And so you get this guilt complex about, well, hell, I'm not a very good husband. I'm not a very good caregiver. I can't even satisfy my wife's needs. And she's the one going through this cancer diagnosis or whatever it happens to be. So it's not just the impact on the patient, but the caregiver and kind of the guilt or the feelings of frustration we have when we're trying to do the right thing and we're trying to have the right food and the food that's going to feel good and taste good and provide the nutritional value. And yet it falls flat, and doesn't work like we expected. So very good comment, Scott.
I'm glad you inferred all of that. It's absolutely part of what I was feeling.
I have been there and done that way too much, I hate to admit.
No, that's great. And I think part of the issue too is, where is the person at in their treatment? Sometimes if you're between treatments, sometimes if you have like a little break, or you can kind of build your nutrition up a little bit. Sometimes, unfortunately, as the chemo or the radiation progresses, you get more of that fatigue thing. So that kind of also parlays to when the cancer, the support groups, because you can say, oh, I've been, like, if you're connected with a buddy, that they really can pull those issues out and really make it more of, you know, of a, this is what you might expect type of situation. Does anyone have any experience with different timings of treatments or timings of problems that really kind of have a comment that could help with this?
My experience was that, like, literally that first 5-6 days after chemo were kind of like the kind of horrible time of, you know, you could just, like, a day or two later, you could start feeling that your taste buds were just like to nowhere. Like, it didn't matter what you ate, everything just tasted bland. You know, and then it progressively got worse. And then, of course, then here comes, you know, 3 weeks later, here's your next session. And so you're just back in that cycle again. But it, you know, for me personally, it just seemed like that first week was kind of the period where your taste buds all went to hell.
Okay. Okay.
That's a great insight to that you're not going to have the flavor, and so you could shift, since you're not going to taste it anyways, you can shift into going for the nutritional density and educate people on, hey, it's going to be bland, so let's go ahead and get the best stuff we can get into the body.
Well, that's a very good point. It's more of a timing type of issue.
And you're having a chance to sort of rebuild your taste. I mean, you know, chemo, the taste goes away and then it starts to come back. You have more chemo, it goes away, it starts to come back. But as new taste buds come up, you know, we can try new things almost with like a blank canvas, if you will. And, you know, teas that never tasted good to me taste good now. And there's an opportunity there to try new things as you sort of build those new taste buds back. Does that make sense? Then they're used to something like, hey, yeah, I know broccoli. I like broccoli, because you have a chance to rebuild them, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I'm also with Greg too, that I mean, I love spicy food, but I pretty much stay away from it now because of just what the repercussions are. Even after I'm done with treatments and stuff, my GI system just doesn't seem to be able to tolerate the spiciness as like I used to.
Let me ask a question of the group here, and I'm not trying to play moderator because we got some great folks here. We had some great ideas. Let me ask a very, very practical question. If we were going to take this information as an organization, as Livestrong, and we were going to do something with it next month, next quarter, in the next 60, 90 days, within the next year, what would you have us do? We've heard a lot of good ideas, but is it Is it pilot in certain areas and work with people like the Smith Center and doing things? Is it working with a particular deal? Is it piloting certain projects, piloting certain things? Is it funding some examples for short-term solutions? What is it that, what are the things that we could do from a practical standpoint that says, okay, wait a minute, we can start this in the next 60 days and then be able to report out on it 90 days after that so that we get some momentum? Because at the end of the day, I really appreciate the conversation and the dialogue, but I want to get some stuff done. I want to fix it. Talking about it is one thing, but I think we, as an organization, we have to have this sense of impatience about, damn it, it's not good enough just to talk about it. We want to implement something that will begin to work. And so I'd like to hear from the group a little bit about, okay, what do you think we ought to do? What are the things that we, practically speaking, we could do next week, next month, tomorrow afternoon that would begin to make a dent in this problem, so that as a result of this conversation we've had today, you begin to see action taking place and we start to see a snowball kind of move down the hill?
So I got a great idea that comes right to mind, is that we can create some awareness challenges to spark that next level to, hey, let's do a certain kind of challenge to promote that, where we're all excited and we can work towards something. So, challenges has really helped people get past their thresholds of belief. You only have to try this for X amount of time and journal and learn, and that can really spark a community and a higher discussion beyond that.
I would say I'm with you, Greg. It's like, okay, we all kind of know what the issues are, right? To get it to those people. So like, I love the idea of a recipe card and what to buy. Livestrong starts shooting that out once a week. It's on the website, and you just grow that cookbook, if you might. But then I also like the idea, again, I'm a big proponent in survivors learn from other survivors. So you do a Zoom call or you do a Facebook Live, and it's peer-led with a nutritionist, but let people talk to one another and be like, hey, I lost my spice, that love of spicy foods. I think for 5,000 other people to hear that and go, I'm not alone. That happened to somebody else. To me, that's a huge impact.
Scott suggested a nutritional guide, and Greg agreed. And I think that is really a place to start, to take this information and to take additional information and put together a comprehensive document, a roadmap that people can find on the Livestrong website to help them begin their own personal research and increase their own knowledge about nutrition and all these things that we're talking about. And there was an earlier comment about educating, I didn't go back into the chat to find it, but there was an earlier comment about educating doctors and nutritionists. And this goes to a root problem in that there are doctors, especially doctors, but also nutritionists that aren't really educated in not only the nuts and bolts of proper nutrition, but even the belief that nutrition is important.
Okay, that's great knowledge, and I think even sometimes when we look at websites or stuff, we can get like a question and answer going. What do you do if you're experiencing something like this or that? So that's great feedback. What about you, Aileen?
Yeah. So oh, I'm getting an echo. Is that okay? Can you hear me?
I think you're okay.
Okay, great. Somebody had mentioned Zoom. We're in a whole new world, right? Where we can, and I love the idea of a document, something somebody can hold, but to implement even faster or to reach people who maybe learn in different ways. What we're doing right now, it can be something that can be pre-recorded. That chat can happen, but it can be pre-recorded. So that it's not time consuming for the producers. That maybe 3, 4, 5 people speak on the topics we've covered or what to expect, et cetera. You know, these nutritional topics that are important. And having that pre-recorded and sending that link like every cancer center possible. You know, I was in 2 different cancer centers and neither one had a nutritionist or dietitian. Oh, just eat in moderation. Just keep, you know, just keep eating in moderation. And that's not good enough, you know. So I don't know. I mean, I just would love to see a link go out, and I don't, you know, again, somebody has to be willing to receive it and open-minded about it. But this is a perfect way to reach a lot of people, what we're doing right now. And again, pre-recorded so that it's something that can just be played anytime, anywhere. I mean, I would have even loved to have had that sitting, having chemo drip into me. I don't think anybody, you know, not very many people maybe would like that, but I wanted to know and I wanted to change. And you sit there for hours and hours and there's nothing about nutrition to read. So anyway, just my 2 cents.
Greg just put a link in the chat to a nutritional guide that's on the Livestrong website that I never even realized was there.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, the Meals to Heal Well guide is a great resource. Hi, I'm KK. I'm the program manager here at Livestrong. And this concept that we've come up with today of your relationship with food being circumstantial or temporary, depending on where you are in the treatment spectrum, I find that super interesting. And I would love to see Livestrong receive feedback from other groups, but also do our own bit of research to see how we can overcome the mental components that you go through and know that even though your experience today with food was bad, it could be fine tomorrow, because it seems like that could really impact you in your lifetime, how you react and interact with food. So I'd love to see us do something like that.
Yeah, it is important to have some sort of like resource to go to for this. I just listened to a presentation, I don't know, like last week, and it was, you know, about, you know, your whole shared cancer treatment conversation, you know, between you and the doctor. It's not just the doctor sitting down and going, okay, this is the kind of cancer you have, and here's the treatment you're going to go through. It needs to be a shared conversation between the patient and the doctor. And that was one of the topics that came up there was, you know, there is no place like a good resource where when you go into your oncologist and they say, here's a bunch of really credible and good websites that you can go to educate yourself, whether it's nutrition or, you know, other modalities or different thoughts on treatments or just other education versus you Googling and going online and, you know, being, it's random, right? We don't know what's good, valid information or what's, you know, a bunch of voodoo magic, whatever kind of stuff out there. And so I think, you know, it sounds like a couple folks have mentioned that, you know, if Livestrong has a good source or some place that we can tell people to go to, that's good, credible information is huge for the newly diagnosed folks, because, you know, you're in panic mode. I mean, let's face it.
That is a great idea, because I feel like the experts, there are plenty of experts out there that can help guide patients even on just different topics. So having, you know, a guest Zoom or a guest link to something that definitely sounds very helpful. Sarah,
my apologies to Victoria. It was Victoria who put the link on, not Greg.
I also
Sorry,
like
Victoria.
No, and Victoria is the superstar behind the scenes that's doing all this stuff. I think the other part that I've heard that an idea that I really like is that it's not always Livestrong doing it all, but it can be led by different participants and different people. And it's almost that way it has a self-fulfilling life of its own, where people are their own contributors and their own way of contributing dialogue and information and data. And that way the direction and the content is fed by real life experiences from people. And so I like that idea, almost like it's an organized forum of information and contacts for people. So I like that element too. That way it's a little bit more sustainable and self-sufficient. and doesn't require a person to be moderating it 24 hours a day. It can kind of be self-led and done like that. So very, very good information.
Yeah, it's almost like an interactive or an active blog.
Right.
Yes. Now, I think Sarah had a comment. She had her hand up a while ago. Sarah, did you have a comment? You're on mute. Okay, great.
I was just going to say, just kind of how when you're first diagnosed, you're so vulnerable to bad information and you just get bombarded, you know, like I said, with all this conflicting advice, but you know, you've got everyone you've ever met sending you videos and blogs and things, and just being able to have, like you said, a credible source of information, but also, you know, show us the science, show us the sources so that we have some, you know, ammunition to deal with all of this other bad information that we're getting, so that, you know, when grandma wants to know, why aren't you doing this and this and this, you can say, well, here's, you know, the science for why, you know, we're going to go this route instead.
No, that definitely makes sense. And I guess the other question I just in my head is like, I'm the clinician. I have many, many years experience with it, but I want to know what you're experiencing. What can we help you with? What kind of issues come up in your treatment that really are stumbling blocks for you? Other than what we've talked about, is there anything, because we're going to be wrapping up soon, is there anything we haven't covered, or why things happen, or what kind of problems you're having that you need help solving? I guess that's kind of an issue that I would love to answer instead of, does anyone have any kind of ideas on that? Like what didn't we cover, or what is something that I can help you with, or a clinician can help you with what you experienced?
What about the mental aspect of it? If you're suffering depression or, you know, other mental side effects from the diagnosis, the treatments and everything, because that can affect your appetite and everything.
No, that's a good point. And I think we have some Live Strong events that are looking into that area as well as part of the programming that they're doing this year. So that's a great comment, because like Daniel was saying before, it's that positive attitude that moves us forward. And depression is, you know, it's very difficult to deal with. So even just getting help with depression, or getting help with, you know, just taking it day by day is a great way to kind of think of things as well.
I would love to jump on that right there. When the gut's improper, we're not going to be able to make the serotonin in our gut, and so it's easy to get depressed. So to understand about self-care, I got educated in the mind and how it plays tricks on us and gives us the worst case scenario, and to ask for more thoughts, so I wasn't stuck to that one thought of the doom and gloom, that I started having other possibilities. And then I learned the acronym of CARE, which is circulation, assimilation, relaxation, and elimination. And so when I got that bigger concept of all those things, that gave me hope that I could love myself more, that I could relax, that I could work on eliminating the things out of my body, that I could understand if I'm eating all the wrong things, I'm not going to assimilate any nutrients. So we moved into self-love and mastery of that's not greedy and wrong, to understand I'm worthy. I can shift my mind and start having these higher beliefs and hopes. And without that first thing, the thought and the belief of better, it's really hard to just say, oh, forget it all. I just want to be happy and just eat my garbage.
No, that's a great point, because I feel like the more you can do to understand yourself and what's going on, and support yourself, those are really big qualities that I think the Live Strong Foundation tries to, like, why we're here is to try and kind of pull together the ideas that are going to be supportive of you. So that's a great point.
And the big step for me on that was to meditate, to clear the mind chatter and get in touch with that other voice that was going to be talking down and give me that worst case scenario, so I could accept it and say, okay, thank you, I understand you're going to give me that, and then move beyond it. Because again, if you're not having the serotonin and the happy chemicals, and you're not aware of that, then you really have to work on the mindset first and have some mindset reminders. So I feed that number one nutrition thing, which was the mind and the belief in better.
No, that makes sense. I think you're talking more about other lifestyle things that can be of benefit as well. Does anyone else have any comments?
Before we sign off, I just want to say a special thank you to all the participants today, at least in this group. I don't know what happened in the other working group, but I learned a lot and I felt like we got a lot of really good information. And understand, one of the benefits that Livestrong has is this collective wisdom of people like you who are coming from all walks of life and a bunch of different experiences, and to get your perspectives and your opinions and your thoughts and your guidance really helps us identify what are the right things for us to be focusing on and what are the right things that we can do next week. I appreciate you sacrificing your time and energy and contributing that to us, but I also want you to hold us accountable. If you don't see things, if you don't continue to hear things, raise your hand and say, hey, wait a minute, what about that thing we talked about on April the 28th about nutrition? We were going to talk about peer groups, and we were talking about some kind of a network that might have. So those kinds of things, hold us accountable for, but we really appreciate your contribution of your time. We know that's the most valuable thing and the most valuable resource you have. It means a ton to us to get your valuable contributions and input. And so stay tuned. And Paula and Amanda, I want to thank you, appreciate your contributions in helping facilitate this, and then all of the providers and participants. And for those of you who continue to battle through a cancer diagnosis, just know we're here. And if there's anything we can do 24 hours a day, pick up the phone and call. We're here to serve and to try to help you. So thanks a ton to everyone. And I'll be quiet. I can tend to monopolize these things, but just wanted to share a heartfelt thank you for taking your time and energy this morning.
No, I agree. I think Greg is right. I think it's kind of like we need to hear what kind of things we can help you with as the most important thing. Because I know what it says in the textbook, and I know what it says when I talk to that patient that I was working with at the cancer center, but I don't know what your initial issues are. So I think that's a real help, because I feel like when we reach out and support people, we want to know what their needs are more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. We're here to help you. So we want to hear what we can do best to help you.
And I do feel there is some issues with just cancer centers and cancer doctors that they can't reach out to everyone. I mean, we kind of say it's important for Amanda to be over at the cancer center, but we have to convince our administration that it's important for Amanda to be over at the cancer center. So I feel like that's the whole thing. When you said, Aileen, that you were at 2 cancer centers and you never saw a dietitian, the patient's got to be the advocate, say, hey, who can you connect me with? Or even just connecting back to Livestrong and saying, what are the questions that need to be answered? Because it is a disparity and it's not really the right thing. And even just the whole idea of not having that, those food deserts, or we can't get the right food. These are real problems. And these are the things we have to figure out as a collective group, how we can solve. Because I feel like a lot of these things are really, you need this group to figure out the problem, but then we need another group to figure out the solution. So it's great to get the problems out on the table. Does anyone have any more comments? Does anything we really missed? I know we talked about the biggest roadblocks, the appetite problems, the problem with the knowledge deficit that you're not getting, the problem with the access to the food, even the GI issue. So is there anything else that we're missing that is really a confounding issue for anybody that we need to kind of talk about, or just have, a quick, discussion about? We have about 5 more minutes.
I'd like to bring up that when I learned that the body cannot digest food and cleanse and repair the gut at the same time, I looked to intermittent fasting and fasting to help repair myself. And that may be further down in the journey, maybe not a starting point, but a solid food vacation where you have easier to digest things, juicing and other items may be a good way for most people or many people to understand. Until we get a lot of stuff out of the body, metals and toxicity, that it's very difficult for us to heal completely or, move into a higher rate of healing.
No, that's a good point. And I think even just the concept of intermittent fasting or the concept of a vegan diet and the benefits. I mean, I think some of these things need to be explored because there's not an area at different times that things aren't appropriate, but there's always room for a discussion and when would this be appropriate or why is this appropriate? Because I feel like sometimes the minute you get the diagnosis, you get the calendar of this is what I'm doing here, there, this is where I have to be, this is the medication I have to take. And I feel like the more we can do to kind of just give you the information to kind of say, okay, hey, this is my big plan, let me discuss it with a doctor. So I think there's a lot of information out there, but not everything really applies to everyone as well. So I think that's a kind of big part that we need to kind of focus on as well.
I'd love to piggyback on that too, that we all have different systems and we're in different parts of our journey. So different blood types and different ailments are going to lead to different routes. And so it's not a one size fits all and never will be.
No, definitely. You're right. And even the whole, the thing that Josh touched on a little bit about the epigenetics. I mean, there are different cancers that different families unfortunately get. So even just knowing what kind of things can be used for prevention or lifestyle changes is really critical.
And that's huge too, that genetics doesn't mean your end destination, that your environment and your nutrition, your mindset can change your expression of your genes. That's what epigenetics is all about. So that is definitely a great place to say there is hope, that you're not stuck in this DNA roadmap.
No, definitely. That's a great point, Danielle.
And that we can be proactive with it because we don't have to wait for cancer to hit or recur. We can be proactive with these lifestyle changes, and nutrition's at the top of that list. I mean, that should be good news for everyone. That's a very, very exciting discovery when cancer patients make that discovery.
No, definitely. And I think the whole idea of just prevention or doing things that are, better or understanding what's better for us, it's kind of like it is on a continuum as we go through our life's journeys. So definitely.
That brought up another memory for me. I was a part of the Answer for Cancer tour in 2011, and their main message was they had 7 items to get yourself off the cancer list or to prevent it to begin with. That was the biggest message, to get like, hey, these are some small shifts we all can take, the no smoking and environment. And so to have that little main list, a guideline of shifts that we can make, that we are in control of our destination, that is the best thing, that we have a hope.
No, that's a great point. I totally agree with that. And I agree with that's all across the continuum of, just different populations, different people. It's really across the whole continuum of these are healthier things that you can do and stuff.